evening, everybody, and welcome to the November 12th, 2024 Grafton School Committee meeting. I'm Leora Brahm, sitting in for Amy Marr, and I call the meeting to order. First on the agenda is public comment. Do we have any public comment today? Seeing none, I will move to general business, and our first order of business is an athletic update with Ashley Paulson.
How are you?
Hi, Ashley.
So starting off year 2, we are getting close to wrapping up our second fall here at Grafton High School and Middle School. So I just wanted to touch on all 8 varsity teams this past fall made the postseason tournament. Last year that wasn't the case, so I really wanted to highlight 2 strong programs that have really turned it around, and not only in terms of like win-loss record, but have also really increased their number of student athletes within their program. So starting with number 1, our volleyball program improved from an 8-12 record. And this year, they actually doubled their wins and went 16-4. They actually earned their spot in the top 32 of the MIAA tournament. So how that works is if you're above 500 or top 32, you make it into the tournament. They were the 31 seed, so they actually had to play a preliminary game, which is almost like a play-in game. We hosted that at Grafton High School against Somerville. We got the win, which being the 31 seed, you then get paired up with the number 2 in the state. So we traveled to Oliver Ames. We had a close battle. They ended up going on to win 3-0, and they're still in the tournament right now. But overall, super successful season. We did have all 3 levels again, the JV1 and the JV2, and the varsity program has really grown over the course of the past year. So I really want to give compliments to that coach and the program of what they've been doing to really grow the volleyball program at the high school. Moving on to our field hockey program, they have improved from a 5-3-10 record. They did not make the postseason last year. This year they have almost doubled their wins. They went 9-2-7. They also made the postseason. They ended up at number 26. So in their first round, they actually went out to Agawam High School because Longmeadow doesn't have a turf field, and when you play in the postseason, you have to play on turf. So they faced the number 7, and they held them to only 3 goals, which was incredible because we had played some other teams like Uxbridge and lost 10-0. They're just the mecca of field hockey. So that was really exciting to see going up against such a strong opponent. The growth of their program. This year we did have that 8th grade waiver on the JV team, and our hopes is for next season, we probably definitely have the numbers with the 7th and 8th graders to have a middle school program. And moving into that mid-watch league next year for fall 2025, a lot of those middle schools do have field hockey, so it would give a lot of the student athletes opportunities of teams that they could go up against. Still in season is our varsity football team, as well as our varsity and JV cheerleading team. Football is the number 3 in the state right now, as Coach McMahon has continued to run a very strong, successful program year after year. Leading us this week, we are in the Elite 8, and if we beat Marblehead, we will again move on to the Final 4 with a second-year rematch against Scituate. Very strong team, and it'll be exciting, and I hope we can get the win on Friday at home. That'll be at 7 p.m. Cheerleading has made it to the regional tournament, so they will compete on Sunday at Marlboro High School. And as long as they come in the top 3 in their division or they score an 85, they will move on to the state tournament, which will be the following Sunday at Worcester State. Moving on to our girls varsity basketball program, we have hired a new coach. His name is Tim Carriga. He is a Grafton resident. He has been an educator in Shrewsbury for the past 20 years. A big thing that we really want to do is bridge the gap between the middle school team and the high school team. So I know our boys varsity coach runs a summer camp open to all boys, ages, I think it's like first grade all the way through sophomore year, 10th grade student athletes during the summer. We really want to start to incorporate a girls' basketball summer program at the high school to increase the number of girls' basketball players across the middle school and high school. So Coach Carriga had brought this to our attention during his interview. We also had current and incoming student athletes that plan to be on either the JV and varsity basketball team part of the interview panel. And he had a lot of great opportunities that he wants to bridge the gap with the middle school student athletes, maybe playing at halftime for some of those games. So that's why we are having a meeting this Thursday to have the parents kind of meet all middle school JV and varsity coaches, ask questions, see what the expectation for the season is. And that way we can provide more opportunities for those middle school students to be recognized during the high school games, which I think is like an awesome opportunity because when you're in 7th and 8th grade, you look up to those high school girls to aspire to be on that team. So that's our plan, and that will be this Thursday at 6 o'clock in the high school gymnasium. It's open to anyone that's like planning on trying out or is a current member on the team as well. Moving on to, again, we are continuing to expand our unified sports opportunities, not only at the high school, but also at the middle school level. So this fall, we opened up the unified basketball opportunity to also middle school athletes, which was a huge success. We had not only the athletes that really wanted to be on the team from the middle school, we had a lot of partners and student athletes that really wanted to just help and be a part of the program, which made it honestly like such a greater success for everyone involved. And a lot of the high school student athletes stepped up as well to really promote the program. Their final jamboree will actually be on November 19th, and that's going to be held at Northbridge High School. So that'll close out the season for the unified basketball program. And I want to give a shout out to Principal Starr. He was the one that was very much advocating for creating and starting the unified bocce program at the middle school. And we actually invited them to our last home game for the basketball to perform and kind of play a little bit of bocce during the halftime of the basketball game when we went against Leicester. So that was an awesome opportunity to be able to see how they're facilitating the bocce over at the middle school, and they want to continue to grow that in the years to come. Finally, a big thing that we've really tried and grow and promote here within athletics is the growing of the Athletic Booster Club. So this had already been established even, 3, 4, 5 athletic directors prior to myself being at Grafton. They had been working with this 501c3 that was run by the president of the Booster Club, Joe Toshis. He was our golf coach and baseball coach. His son is a Grafton High School Hall of Famer. And what we plan to do is that all the revenue that we are generating, and it's going back into the 501c3, it's all going to be dispersed equally across all athletics. So just because we're selling only at like football and basketball games, because those are the greater attendance events, when something big comes like to our attention, say, for example, we wanted to get new scoreboards in the gymnasium, we would all like vote on it, and we want to reach out to all fall, winter, and spring coaches and kind of get like a wish list together and see what are the things that they're really looking for, and then break it down into what would benefit athletics overall versus just supporting one specific team. And then right now, we're currently charging just for adults. Obviously, the round of 16 and the round of 8 are controlled by the MIAA, so they dictate the gate fee, which is why last week it was a lot higher for adults and we had to charge for students. But prior to that, the gate fees was all done electronically through the platform GoFan. Those checks were then brought to our finance office, and those get deposited into our athletic revolving account. And what that account is used to pay for is like the game workers. For example, at volleyball games, we have teachers and at the middle school and high school that help run the game clocks. If for some reason there was like 4 events going on at once, specific sports require like a site admin, and I can't be in multiple places at once. So that's what we use that account, and how we're increasing that revenue within the revolving account just by charging with the parents. And honestly, for the past like 2 home games, we've brought in at least like on average like $2,000 a game. So it's really like helping. It doesn't seem like a lot in the beginning, but like over time it will definitely start to add up. And that brings me to our budget slide. I'm not sure if you want me to touch on the specifics regarding our budget. Me and Kathleen have done a pretty good job. The athletic budget used to be combined with the high school, so we have kind of like separated athletics so they can kind of have its own entity in terms of what our budget looks like for FY '26 in comparison to '23, '24, '25.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
can I ask a question?
Yes.
What's happened with athletic stipends for GHS? They've more than doubled from what's been expended in FY '24 to your current budget. Why is that?
Are you referring to
To the last line, athletic GHS stipends. The FY '23 expended was 49,000, then it went to 66.9, but then your budget went up to 145,312, then up to 149,55, 555.
It just had to be reallocated. So we went through a conversion and things were up in the contracted services. So now that's why I put salaries on this slide for you to see.
Okay,
I didn't do that with the other ones because I wanted this to show. The top is really athletics, contracted services and supplies. And the bottom are the stipends and the salaries, which are set. So the stipends are the contracted coaches, and the professional salaries is just 2 full-time positions.
okay.
So overall, you can see down at the bottom.
No, I see that the numbers don't really change that much, yeah. The
And I
totals.
can assure you, we have had some coaches that have been here 20 years. Their stipend has not changed since they first started until now. We have added like a few positions, like we did add the JV2 boys soccer team for program expansion as well as the JV2 volleyball team. But in terms of like the actual salary that a varsity coach has gotten if they started here in 2010 to 2025 is exactly the same number.
And next week, we'll be talking about operations, and so the transportation for athletics is on the transportation budget.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry, Madam Chair. Oh, I wrote even my question. Oh, so thank you so much. This is great. Congratulations to a terrific fall season. It's wonderful to hear about so many student athletes and really taking advantage of our programs. And I thank you for continuing to grow them and giving more students opportunities. So that's fantastic. I'm also happy to, actually, I had 2 questions. One, and I think it's just a wording thing. When you were talking about the unified bocce team doing like performing, you mean they're just playing?
Yeah, they,
Right.
when the teacher that helps out or is like the volunteer sent me the email, she said,
Yeah.
could they have like a performance? But yeah, they played like a bocce game and it was like 3 athletes got to throw and then the
Awesome.
next 3. Yeah, it wasn't like an actual like performance.
Thank you. Okay. I mean, I'm a theater mom, so
No,
my
no.
mind goes, I'm like, what did I would, sorry I missed it. That's awesome. My other question is the athletic booster. So I'm super glad that they're coming, that they're kind of reforming. It's super helpful. As a 501c3, I feel like they're like a parent group or something, so they're not really oversaw by us in general. So who though is, so I know with the, it sounds like it's kind of integrated though, right? So are you, who's collecting the money at the end of the games? Like, how is that being handled?
So
Is
we
there
have our-
presidents that are elected, or how does that work?
Yeah, so the current president is Joe Toshis. He currently lives half the time here in Sutton, Mass, and half the time in Florida. So he will be actually coming up. He has documented everything. He's filed all the taxes for the past 10x years.
Right. Oh,
We're in
wow.
the transit, yeah, so he has all that paperwork.
But he'd love to give it over to maybe a current parent.
Correct, yeah, but
Thank
his
you.
son also really wants to get involved, and some of his
Awesome.
son's friends, I would say like they're in their early 30s, and they're also in the Grafton High School Hall of Fame, so they are like kind of in it for the long haul. They really want to give back and get involved in continuing to support athletics at Grafton High School and middle school. But right now, we do also have an online payment form that people can pay, and that's all done electronically, and then those checks are just sent to the 501c3 account, so we don't have to deal with any of that money.
Great.
But there is a select, I would say, like 5 to 7 parents that are the same parents every week that have been helping until the next meeting we have on the 20th, where we're gonna actually like elect a new president, because there's a lot of like paperwork transition that has to
Sure.
go over to make sure that everything's done properly.
Okay, great, that's terrific. Well, thank them, at least from me, that's amazing, and it's great to see alumni really want to come and give back.
Yeah,
I love
definitely.
that. So thanks.
Of course.
Anyone else, any other questions?
Question/comment. Hi. I loved last year in your presentation when you were talking about making the JV2 teams, and that was, if I recall, it's volleyball and
Boys soccer.
boys soccer. And I was wondering how those numbers are looking. I know you said you still have the teams, but like, are they like really full? That was
Yeah,
my
yeah, yeah.
absolute favorite part of your
No
of your
problem.
program last
So
year.
we, this year for boys soccer, we kept probably like 20 to 21 on JV2 boys soccer. And we still had cut probably like 14 student athletes.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
we had almost as many boys soccer athletes as we did football players try out for the fall season, which was like crazy. And then in volleyball, it was a little bit hard because we have that position like stipend, but if you look back at the numbers, like what the coaches are paid, it's really hard to get someone to actually work those hours. You know, it's practicing every day after school, it's committing to 2 games a week. So for the first like week, the varsity coach was kind of like balancing both until we had a parent whose daughter was a freshman, and she's like, Mom, I'm not gonna have a team if you don't step up. So luckily, we had a parent step up. And we should have, I would own this, like do a better job of like differentiating the numbers like more evenly between the JV1 and the JV2, but it did give those JV2 players, it was only freshmen, like a lot of more opportunities to grow as a freshman. And a lot of the teams that we are playing generally are just freshmen we just call it JV2 for reasons that if there was like a sophomore that we didn't want to cut and they wanted to continue to grow in the program, it's like you're not on the freshman team.
Yep, I think that's fair. Are there any other teams that you would be looking, you're also cutting a ton of players that we might be looking at
We
another
do it for boys basketball.
Okay.
The coach takes anywhere from like 16 to 17 boys on the JV team. And last year, and I'm gonna do the same this year, I've already scheduled some, we get those freshmen that are on the JV team, we get them like 5 to 6 freshman-only games.
Oh, cool.
So we don't specifically have like a JV2
Special team.
stipend
Yep.
or a JV2 team, but we make it a point to get them games.
Love it. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Anything else? Awesome. Thank you. This was great. It seemed like a really busy fall season. I just had a question about sort of the middle school programs and where you see growth there. Because those kids have just seemed to be getting a lot more involved, even at the high school, and just want to see how we're developing programs there.
So I would love to see a middle school field hockey team, I think, for next year. I think that's like, one, we have like the field space, we can share the upper turf. You also have to think of like the teams that we're gonna play. So moving into that mid-watch league, there is a need for that. Another thing that's been brought to my attention by a couple parents is having like a middle school football team. Because we really try not to ever have like waivers that we do for like field hockey or boys hockey. Just because like the danger level, like I think it's not appropriate for an 8th grader to be playing at, on a JV team even, because some of the JV kids are juniors, and like hitting and concussions, I just like don't think that's the smartest decision. I'd rather them play with like-minded 7th and 8th grade boys that are similar in size. So I think that is an area of growth if I continue to look at some of the numbers, and then just to like continue like feeding that varsity program. If you look across the state at successful programs, they're all built off successful youth programs. So without those youth programs, and same thing with volleyball, like we have a club at the middle school, but it's not a real team.
Right.
And those are sports that are like super practical in terms of like we have the balls and we have the net and we have the gym space. So it's like you don't have to go out and buy a ton of equipment. So it's not like harmful on a budget if you're looking from, a budget standpoint as a school district. And again, providing another opportunity, and that's also a sport with field hockey where if there isn't one for like the boys and the girls, like it's like gender neutral. Anyone could play on it. So I think those would be like probably the key areas. And it's hard going from the fall where there's cross country and they take, over 50 student athletes, boys and girls soccer, to the winter where it's only basketball and, they can only take so many kids. So I think growing in different seasons would also be critical. I think with the way that Grafton is in terms of like athletics, lacrosse is, if you come here on any Saturday, there's lacrosse on every single field. So I would say at the middle school level, lacrosse is really growing.
Great. Thank you so much.
You're
Anything else before we let Ashley
Do
go?
I have one more comment?
Yeah.
It's a nice one. Ashley, I just want to tell you, everywhere I go, I hear compliments about you. And people are just thrilled with your work, so thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate
Yeah,
it.
it's great going into your second year. So thanks for all your work.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Right. All right, so we're going to move to the teaching and learning update with Jen Mannion and team.
And team.
Posse.
Hello, hello.
Hello.
Thanks for spending your Tuesday night here. It's nice to see everyone. Thank you. And I'm excited to present. I'm also starting year 2. It feels much better than year 1. Not nervous at all this year compared to last year. So I'm looking forward to talking to you about what we've been up to the past year. So I'm going to start out with just an overview of the spring 2024 MCAS. So in your packet, you'll see. Sorry to interrupt. Thank you. Similar start to our overview, just a reminder about MCAS, what it is, what it isn't. So I like the language here in this section in terms of MCAS being a tool that we use as educators to evaluate student performance and educational efficacy, and also look at our strengths in instruction, curriculum, and assessment. And we do use the data frequently, in a way that I think is appropriate based on what the intent is there. So I was reading through some of the background notes and laughing to myself that MCAS came to be around 1993 with the Education Reform Act, and I have been around longer than MCAS in education. So when I started, I said to the superintendent, to the principal at the school where I was teaching, how do I know what to teach in terms of looking for curriculum maps and resources and things? And this is verbatim. He said to me, there's the book closet. We were standing near it. You're a college grad. I trust you. And he walked away, and that was it. I think at that point, it was figured out, and we did, and did as well as we could. And then MCAS came into play, and initially, students were just tested in grades 4, 8, and 10, ELA and math. Ultimately, science was added. And then we started to add it in all grade spans up through grade 8, and then the science in grades 5, 8, and 10, and language arts and math in grade 10, and it became a graduation requirement. So we've seen a little bit of a shift in this previous election around the graduation requirement component in terms of equity and making sure that we have equity in our assessment tools and how we're using those tools, and people realizing that perhaps using MCAS as a graduation requirement was not providing the equity that was intended to. But I think it does still serve a purpose as a tool. I think it's still an important part of the work that we do in terms of the items here that proponents have often speak to. So in terms of accountability and standards, before MCAS, often the kind of education you received depended on where you lived. So if you lived in a town that had lots of revenue to support the schools, you might receive a different level of education than one that didn't. It might depend on who you had for a teacher. It might depend largely on what state you went to. So we saw shifts in Common Core. We know Massachusetts is ranked very high in terms of our educational standards. And other states often work to align with what we do here. But I think that accountability piece is important because the goal is to guarantee students a viable curriculum and education. So that consistency piece continues to be a part of why we do the MCAS and how we use the data. I think in Grafton, we know it's a great data point, but it's one data point, it's a point in time. So we are working heavily to triangulate with additional data points. Grafton, as you know, adopted the STAR assessments for benchmarking, which add another layer, and they give us an opportunity to make changes midstream, throughout the school year, versus MCAS is more of a diagnostic at the end and really drives what we do in the subsequent year. But we know that isn't the whole story. It doesn't paint a full picture of the learner or of the instruction, so we are utilizing formative and summative assessment data as well. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit more when we talk about the adoption of our new resources and how we're using those. But I think that that's a component that administrators, teachers, my department is working on, is how do we get a full and complete picture of a learner through the data that we have. So diving into the actual MCAS data for this year, some of the patterns and trends at the state level. And again, these initial patterns and trends are at the state level. I'm going to show you comparatively where Grafton lands. So students across the state improved in math, but still not up to where we were pre-pandemic, 2019. Same in language arts. We saw some growth overall, but still not to those same measures. Science across the state, grades 5 and 10 showed improvement, but grade 8 scores were lower. A little bit different in Grafton, and I'll speak to that in a moment. Chronic absenteeism fell below 20% for the first time since the pandemic. And when I show you our accountability, you're going to say, yay, Grafton kids, because we're doing really well there. And demographic groups, gaps for historically disadvantaged groups remain. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. So our first slide of analysis here, these slides show Grafton compared to the state. So this is English language arts, Grafton's performance compared to the state performance. So Grafton is the teal solid line and the state is the dotted line. So you can see a similar pattern in terms of the flow of the data. But again, Grafton continues to perform above the state, 4.8% student growth percentile increase over the previous year and over the state performance. It's a little hard to see the scatter plot on the side, but Grafton High School shows the highest growth percentiles there, followed by the middle school, and then North Street and Millbury Street, you always see they're sort of neck and neck, and it depends on which content area, it shifts a little bit, but pretty close in terms of student growth. So you can see from the language arts, 55% of Grafton students are meeting or exceeding expectations, compared with the state average, which was around 41%. Average scale score in Grafton is 503, which was 8 points higher than the state. In terms of our performance in language arts, we expected to see more of a dip because of piloting new resources in the K-6 classrooms. So it was nice to see that that dip didn't really play out the way we anticipated it might. And we see that Grafton students are showing growth faster than their peers across the state. In terms of math, similar story. You can see a little bit of a shift, though, where the state has kind of plateaued since 2022. Grafton is continuing to gain in proficiency in terms of students meeting and exceeding. So that, in terms of the bar chart there, you like to see that nice incline. So 58% of Grafton students are meeting or exceeding expectations, which is 10% higher than the state average. You can see the average scale score was 505. And while we haven't hit pre-pandemic levels yet, we're getting very close. And that's despite the involvement of teachers in grades 6 through 12 piloting a new resource last year. So that was really encouraging, great to see. Science doesn't show growth percentiles because they don't take it annually. They take it in grades 5, 8, and 10. But we see a 1% increase for students meeting or exceeding over last year for Grafton, and a 14% increase versus the state average. So this is where I said I'd highlight a little bit of a difference in Grafton data versus state data. So in Grafton, grade 5 showed an increase of 7%, which was 14% more than the state in terms of proficiency, meaning exceeding in grade 5. In grade 8, Grafton increased while the state decreased in terms of proficiency and growth. And in grade 10, Grafton saw a little dip where the state saw a little increase. So we'll look into what we think is driving that. We were still 4% higher than the state, but it was interesting to see that we were on a downward dip rather than the upward trajectory that the state saw. And then I included some encouraging data samples because we're going to talk a little bit about HQIMs are called high quality instructional materials, big push happening statewide right now in terms of adoption. So some encouraging data we were looking at is in terms of, this one shows Grafton's in year 3 of implementing an HQIM in elementary math. The district adopted Envisions Math. And so you can see that we had a 65% student performance in terms of meeting or exceeding the standards, and that's up 5% from last year. And it's 20% over the state average. So it's nice to see that that investment in materials and in professional development and in teachers really getting to know the resource and utilizing the resource looks like it's starting to pay off quite well. And we looked at, this slide is for grade 4. And if you look back at 2023, 60% of students in grade 4 were meeting or exceeding. You okay, Laura?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay. And we had a 9% increase in student growth. So we talked a lot about this data as a department because you see a minus 12.1% in the student growth percentiles. But if you'll see, there was such a steep increase from 2022 to 2023. It's hard to replicate that year after year, but we did see an increase in students meeting or exceeding. So at some point, you get so high that those start to balance out. So excited by that data and by the work of our teachers and administrators in leading that. The next slide is similar data. This is looking at 8th grade MCAS assessment data for spring of 24. They are in year 2 this year of implementing a high-quality instructional resource for language arts. So I love seeing this data where, the state is showing a decline, and often we see the same pattern, but with a margin. And in this slide, you can see that our 8th grade students were on an upward trajectory despite their peers across the state being on somewhat of a downward trajectory in this round of assessment. And I know how hard our teachers worked, how hard our coordinators and support staff worked to make sure that implementation of that resource went the way it should and how it was designed to be used. So super proud of everybody involved in those efforts. And I think you're going to hear from Paige in a minute, but Paige was saying that the 9th grade teachers have already commented on noticing a difference in terms of student skills coming into 9th grade from 8th. So that's fantastic. The next piece is about our accountability report. So the accountability takes multiple factors. They look at student achievement, student growth, high school graduation rates, English learner progress, advanced coursework completion, and chronic absenteeism. Each one gets a weight, and then there's a calculation from the combined score. And also each school is given a percentile rank, not the district, but each school, from 1 to 99 that compares their performance to students in similar schools in similar grades. So they use multiple years of data to determine these scores. But something I wanted to highlight is that this year, Grafton received somebody have it down here, descriptor of substantial progress towards targets, which I think is the first time in a while. Typically, we've received moderate progress towards targets, and compared to the state, which mostly was in the moderate range, and our DART schools, which I'll show you. So that's really exciting to see that despite the fact that we piloted resources in 2 content areas, that we still saw substantial progress. So this is a little bit of how that target data is formulated. A 4 is the highest you can get. A 0 means there was a decline. A 1 means no improvement. A 2 means improvement. A 3 means met, and a 4 means exceeded. So you can see, first column is non-high school grades, all students. Second is lowest performing students, non-high school grades, then all students' high school grades, and then lowest performing students' high school grades. So you can see we have some 3s, some 4s, some great data going on. What we're looking at and wondering about is the decline in language arts at the high school level and science. Math, we anticipated, piloting a new resource, it makes everybody feel like a brand-new teacher. Teachers are learning it while they're using it. And we were piloting multiple resources last year, so it was hard for teachers to collaborate because they weren't all using the same resource. So that's sort of a almost unavoidable outcome when you're going through these processes. But some curiosity around the decline for English and science. So it's not a decline necessarily in student performance, it's just a decline in our progress toward that target in terms of weighting these. So looking at what was happening in student achievement. So when you look at our high school achievement data, our 10th grade achievement data, we saw great growth, we saw great percentiles in terms of proficiency, in terms of meeting or exceeding the standard. So it just means we need to make more progress towards meeting the targets that were identified through the analysis of multiple years' work. So we always like when there's something for us to dig into and get to work on, so that'll be a piece that we look at. We've done some of that digging in and getting to work on already. We have resources that break down the data for us and tools that we use. And what we see and believe is that Grafton has done an incredible job in terms of cultivating students' literacy skills, particularly in the area of reading. And it has paid off tremendously in terms of our data and our student achievement. Where we're seeing a need next is writing. So language, reading, essay, and writing are the domains that the data is divided into. So our students do pretty well in the essay portion, the reading portion, the language portion, and then the writing portion is where we need to catch up. So what's exciting and encouraging to me is that where Grafton shines the spotlight, we thrive. So the focus has been on reading, and we are seeing the benefits and the outcomes of that focus. So I have ultimate confidence that we can now shine that spotlight on the writing piece and figure out what our kids need and get them there over the next couple of years. These are our DART schools, similar demographic profiles. And one question we're always asked is, what's the per pupil expenditure? We know they have similar demographics, so I included the per pupil expenditure, it's hard to say late at night, on the slides, just so you can see a breakdown of that. And I'll show you, just give you a moment to digest. And then I'll show you one of the ways that we use that kind of data. We really feel like data should make us curious. It should drive questions and then set us on the path to find answers and solutions, and things that we can implement. So an example is in looking at our DART schools, we can look at Holliston. We can look at their per pupil expenditure is very similar to Grafton. It's off different by about $110 per student. And when we look at their achievement in math, if you look across, 72% in grade 10 met or exceeded the standards. So it makes us curious. What are they doing over there in Holliston? So as a department, this is where we dig in and start networking. So we start calling people and seeing who we can talk to and asking them, what are you up to? What's working? What have you learned? Anything that we can beg, borrow, or steal, so that our data starts to mirror what Holliston's data looks like. Knowing there's lots of variables that play into it, and each year is different based on the students in front of us. But I think that networking, professional leadership, collaborative approach has become a big part of our work in our team and across the district. So just one of the ways that we use this type of data. So sorry, before I move on, so any questions or concerns or anything I can research for you around MCAS data?
Anybody have anything?
I'll continue on. So we know that data is foundational to all the work that we do, and DESE has released a new educational vision. So I gave you a copy just so you have it to peruse. We're part of multiple different organizations, and most everything we attend or participate in, they start with doing a deep dive into DESE's vision. They have protocols to help you dig in and share what you notice and what you wonder. So some of the takeaways for us have been language around enabling students to excel at grade level and beyond. So what does that mean instructionally? How are we figuring out who's ready to go beyond? And then how do we utilize our resources? And what does beyond mean? Because typically it means beyond the skill or the content of the standard. So going deeper, doing more complex work is typically what's implied there. So there are three components to DESE's new educational vision. The first is, I think, a core value for Grafton. I know it is for Dr. Cummings. It's always the basis of our strategic plan. I think it's how all educators in Grafton approach the work. So the first is that all students are known and valued. And we're looking for resources that reflect that. So do we have resources that offer culturally and linguistically sustaining practices? So that's part of what we're going to talk about in a little bit. Learning experiences are relevant, real world, and interactive. And when I was your age, relevant, real world, and interactive meant if you were doing fractions, you talked about pizzas. You have 8 friends and a whole pizza. How do you make sure everybody gets a slice? We know there's more to it than that, right? So looking at how we truly make it real world, relevant, and interactive, I think the portrait of a graduate or portrait of a learner, competencies at the high school address that. I think we see that a lot in the social emotional work that happens at the elementaries and middle schools, because part of real world is how do you learn to work and think and problem solve with others in a way that's globally relevant. And individualized supports, how do we enable students to excel? And that's all students to excel. So that involves knowing where they are to start, establishing some kind of baseline, and being creative and tenacious in determining what students need so that they are able to, every student gets a year's growth at least, so how do we facilitate that? And I think that you see it in the MCAS data across the state, across the nation. It continues to be an area where education is evolving based on what we know. So that's mirrored here in Grafton. So the first slide here is just a little more emphasis on what we mean by real-world experiences. So the top left corner might be something some of us in our generation may have experienced in our math textbooks. 2 planes are traveling at a certain mile per hour. When do they finally pass each other? And then the other 2 are pictures from walking through classrooms. And I don't know if I was in your class when I took the photo. Did you guys do the DayQuil? Yeah, loved it. So in a math class at the high school, they were determining the half-life of the medications in DayQuil so that they would know how often you can take a medication like that. So if you think about the transfer skills in learning like that, what students can transfer to other classes, other grade levels, life beyond high school, like this will matter 10 years from now to you, more than 2 planes traveling at a certain number of miles an hour, and when will they pass each other? Not that that's not important, and not that some people don't use that in their careers, they do. And the students down the bottom, I believe, this is a Project Lead the Way photo, and I believe they're working on infection detection, so they're using sensory details and data to diagnose disease. So part of what our data shows is the push towards needing resources that challenge all learners and keep kids in the core content and provide opportunities for complex thinking, collaborative work, more student-centered learning. And I think oftentimes in education, people go, oh, here we go again. But we work in a research-based profession that is based on what we know about neuroscience and learning in the brain, so there's always going to be shifts. Sometimes it feels like we're shifting back to something familiar, and sometimes it's to something new. So in front of you, you have a document called Understanding the Shifts, this guide. So districts across Massachusetts are adopting high-quality instructional materials, and we're finding it's a very heavy shift. And districts who have been in it longer than us keep saying, stay in it, stay in it, stay in it. There's no way around the muck, you just have to go through. It's challenging, but stay in it because you'll start to see the rewards. So we saw that, I think, in that 8th grade data that I showed you, because they were in, they've adopted Wit and Wisdom, which is a high-quality instructional material. So why the shift? Obviously, we're looking for things that are standards aligned. We're looking for evidence-based practice. We're looking, so there's research-based and evidence-based. Research means research supports it. Evidence means there's data to show that it actually does have an impact in action when in play. We're looking for coherence across grades and subjects. It shouldn't depend on who your teacher is, or what school you go to, or what town you live in. You should get a rigorous education, and you should be able to switch classes or change your schedule and still be engaged in that rigorous learning. And looking for high-quality texts. So we have, in the past, brought the level of the text to the student, and that was based on the current research in science. And now we're realizing if we want to put our students on that trajectory of learning, we need to bring them to the level of the text. So the instruction becomes about how do we get all students to the level of that text or beyond. Why are districts adopting? It's to improve student outcomes. Increasing equity and access is a really big part of this adoption. So we're not supplementing with something, say a student, maybe their performance indicates that they're more at a 3rd grade level when they're in their 5th grade classroom. We're not bringing those materials down 2, we're bringing them up 2. So the hope is that by immersing students in high-quality instructional materials from K on, we won't see these gaps that we have to then fill, and we won't put kids on these trajectories that we then have to write. The idea is that it will enhance teacher effectiveness because it's focusing on facilitating student learning and providing individualized student supports, and streamlining curriculum development. This, we sort of, in year 1, you're like, yeah, right, streamlining. It doesn't feel like anything streamlined about this. I'll talk to you a little bit more about that. It says, reduces the burden on teachers to create their own materials. Right now, teachers are feeling like a big whoop. We don't have to go out and find things, but man, there's a lot. They're like drinking from a fire hose because it's so rich. So they have to figure out new instructional routines, new assessments, new scope and sequence, pacing, things like that. So it's a lot this first year. So we're hoping that it's going to pay off, and we believe it will. So what does it mean for our district? We're transitioning to HQIMs, and it's an ongoing process, and we do certain content areas at a time, not all at once. It involves careful selection of materials, comprehensive professional development, and we're redefining what we mean by comprehensive. So I'll talk to you about that in a little bit. Like if we thought we were comprehensive in the past, we need to do so much more with the adoption of these. So we adopted illustrative math for students in grades 6 through 12, EL education for students in grades K to 6, excuse me, that's a typo there, and Project Lead the Way in our computer science classes in K to 8, and Envisions Math, they're in year 3, and that's K to 5. So there's always the what could possibly go wrong, the postmortem piece. So for teachers, it's hard. I can't imagine as a teacher, I felt like I was pretty good at what I did as a teacher, to have somebody say, hey, now you have to do this. You have to use these resources and teach in this order and try these instructional strategies, because that's not why people get into teaching. It's a creative practice. So that shift is challenging. But if teachers can follow the design, there's room for autonomy as they meet the needs of individual learners, and are making sure that all students feel known and valued and understood. Increased workload. If teachers, right now, a lot of teachers, the slides are kind of bare bones that come with the resource. So a lot of teachers are spending a lot of time creatively improving the slides, and I keep trying to protect them from themselves. Like that can be year 2 work. It's okay to not have the prettiest slides year 1. Can you put your cognitive energy somewhere else? But we want to do our best with the students in front of us right now. So it's getting teachers to figure out there's only so much of you and only so much time. Where are you going to put that time and energy year 1? Missed opportunities for professional growth. I don't think we're having that. I think teachers are absorbing as much as we can provide. And inconsistency across classrooms and schools, so that's the really working on cohesion part, and making sure that people are using the resource with integrity. For students, we're trying to avoid fragmented learning experiences. We're trying to increase exposure to high-quality texts and tasks, make sure that skill development is consistent. The way these resources are designed is that it used to be I taught my unit on theme, and then I was done teaching my unit on theme, and I moved on to character, and I was done with my unit on character. And the way these resources are designed is that kids are in a perpetual spiral. So it spirals back and there's a touch point. It's an intentional spiral, so the rigor increases with each touch point, but these touch points are built in. So if you deviate from the design, you might dismantle that intentional spiral. So that's challenging because people trying to figure out what can I cut because the pacing is so tight, and it's hard to know when you're using it for the first year and living in it. So we want to make for sure for the district, we get the return on investment, because these have been in big investments. We want to make sure that we're monitoring progress and providing support. And remembering the difference between integrity and fidelity. So when we talk about using these resources with integrity, a lot of people hear fidelity, like you have to use it the way it's designed. So we're talking about what does it mean to use a resource with integrity, to not deviate so much that we lose the value of the resource, but to allow for teacher professional judgment, expertise, and autonomy. So that's what we're figuring out all in year one. So in terms of implementation, we have pretty much wrapped up step one in terms of building foundations, although I think deep dive into materials is something we will spiral back to over and over, because the more we know, we can go back and dive deeper each time. It says establish implementation teams. So we're a small district. We don't have implementation teams, but we have all the players that we meet with regularly. So building administrators, grade level and department heads, teachers, each other in our department, so that we're constantly assessing where we are and what we need to do next to keep the process moving forward. In terms of step two, collaborative learning communities, we now have the teaching and learning meetings that were added with this round of negotiations, so we're using that time to collaborate on the implementation of these resources. We attend lots of things, so we heard about one district that does what they call task teams, which was an intriguing idea to me. So using perhaps some of our Title II funds to pay teachers to monthly meet and attack tasks like unpacking the next unit of instruction so that they can build a library of resources to share with colleagues and help the district move forward. So looking at ways to be creative throughout our implementation and with professional development. And we know an area to work on is really that stakeholder communication. We need to do a better job with that. And we're learning more and more. Every time we have an exposure, we learn more that we can then share with others. So we're going to beef up our communication so that everybody gets on the same page around what's happening. My kid used to love math and be great at math, and they tanked. What's happening? And that'll take us to the end of the year, and then next year hopefully will be about refinement and alignment. So what we're hearing from the groups that we're in is you really have to stay with it. Some curriculum directors say, yeah, year one is all about tiers, so we're hoping to not have year one be all about tiers, but it is a significant shift and lift for teachers. But all the districts that we work with say, if you stay with it, you will see the end outcomes in year two, and in year three, it gets easier and easier. So I'm just gonna show you.
Tell me about what you made.
I'm going to pause that for a second. A couple quick videos of implementation of these resources. So the first one I'm going to show you is middle school project Lead the Way. So you can see what the learning looks like.
I made this diary, and there's an alarm that's supposed to go off, but I didn't hook it up yet. And when you open it, it's supposed to be like, it starts beeping uncontrollably, and yeah.
I think a lot of people would find that helpful, right? And why did you make this? What are you learning about?
We're learning about coding and how to make like microbits, so we made it so we could like see if the alarm would actually work and see how like coding works.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that with me.
She's like, I didn't really have a choice. You still got that. She was great, though. She played along. So Project Lead the Way, you can see the difference in how projects used to be versus real-world application. I think everybody can relate to wanting something that sets off an alarm when somebody touches your private stuff, and they're learning about all the coding. They were learning about inputs and outputs, I believe, in that session. and designing those. And each, they typically work in groups of 3, and each group was designing something different. They weren't all designing alarms for journals. So lots of great ideas. The middle photo there is an early elementary EL education bulletin board. So it's illustrative of the routines and structures that teachers are putting in place. There's word walls so that students are focusing on language demands. They're thematic, so all the texts support a theme, but it's a blend within the theme of fiction, nonfiction, poetry, podcasts, videos, you name it, it kind of gets worked into the theme for analysis. There's also social emotional learning skills, so those are in the bottom left corner of that image there that are woven in through each unit in EL education. So the teachers can swap out whatever is happening for that unit or module, but the structures stay the same in terms of the routines for lessons. And then this video that I'm about to show you is a 6th grade math class who is using illustrative math. And the students were, what we love about illustrative, it's very student-centered, so the students do a lot of the talking and working through and problem solving and thinking. So these students were given cards. One student was the data card and one student was the problem card. And the student with the problem card had to ask the student with the data card for data to help solve the problem. The student with the data card had to respond with questions like, why do you think you need that information? Why are you asking me that? So that there was dialogue around, well, I think I need it because. So these two were working hard to solve.
20, maybe 40, like that. So now what I'm confused about, I believe that's the right answer, so. Okay, so now we have to do, Jada has 60%, oh, we already did that, which is $1.20. Let's just see, 'cause we both tried, so. But, wait, yeah, you're right, 'cause you can't see there.
So what I love about observing in illustrative math classrooms is, in the past, I feel like those students would raise their hand for help long before the end of the video clip. And you see the perseverance, and they're trying to work it through, trying to problem solve, drawing on what they have, challenging each other's thinking. So I think it is a great shift, a lot of bang for our buck in terms of instruction. You always want the student brains to be the ones working hardest in the room, and I think that that's what we're seeing with these resources.
Madam Chair, before you go on,
Stop the videos.
Jen, why was it with Project Lead the Way, elementary kids, they'd be faced with having everyday computers class for
That's a
X amount
great
of weeks?
question. Project Lead the Way requires a lot of builds. So if we had to have the materials for every student in the grade span to do a build, we would have exceeded our grant funds. And the builds and materials take up a lot of room and space. So a lot of it is just logistical. They need to be able to come in and work on their build and have access to the materials. It's hard to get enough so that all 100, 200 kids in the grade have what they need. And what the teachers are finding is the continuity is really impacting the learning. So teachers are remarking on what their students know and are able to do and how much less disjointed it is because they're not having a week's time pass before they come back. So kids are coming in next day and saying, hey, we finished off on this, this is where we ended up, we need to do this next, and blah, blah, blah. And she's finding, the teacher I talked to at Millbury Street said, I can't believe their recall this year compared to years past. When I was a grade level leader, we had to shadow a student for a day, and my biggest takeaway was, as a teacher, I would say, okay, what did we do yesterday? And it would take minutes, and I would say, how can you not remember? We just did a whole, well, they're changing classes, changing periods, sometimes up to 9 times a day. They're seeing all these different teaching styles. They go home in between, they come back. So I think that that continuity piece, we didn't intend for that to be an outcome, but it's sort of a happy outcome of the need to do it all these consecutive classes in a row.
Did you find any feedback from students regarding that? Like in elementary school, for instance, a kid might say, you know, I love computers, but I also like to have gym class on Monday, and I'm missing that so that I can go do computers.
I haven't yet, but I haven't asked the question well enough to really share
Okay.
data on the answer. So I'll
I
definitely.
know a student who was ready to storm Dr. Cummings' office if he had a car.
I did say to a student, like, hey, Tom, what do you think of Project Lead the Way? And he said, you mean Project Supreme? So that's a good endorsement. But yeah, I think first year, working out the kinks, it's always going to be challenging. So the more feedback we get, the better we'll do year two. So thank you for asking. So we're looking at enhanced professional development with the adoption of these high-quality instructional materials, and we're finding what we learn with the adoption of one translate to the adoption of others. So we know that we're gaining skills and information that we'll use in subsequent adoptions or implementations. So we applied for and were accepted to the HQIM Professional Development and Purchase Opportunity. It was a grant opportunity. So they had 2 tracks, one for purchasing and one for PD. We had already purchased the math. So we were able to do the second track to get support around PD. So we are partnering with TNTP, which is the New Teacher Project. And they are offering us weekly coaching for the math coordinators and myself. And they do walkthroughs and gather the data in classrooms. They work with administrators. So DESE is acknowledging what a big shift this is and how much support is needed. And these partnerships are emerging because of that. So we're really excited to be accepted to be part of that. So that is supporting our math implementation. And for language arts, we are accepted into the, I think it's called the HQIM Community of Practice for Literacy. And that group, our group, is just people who adopted either EL education or one other resource. And again, it's just taking you through the implementation process and helping us with our leadership and support of teachers through the process.
Jen, can I ask a quick question?
Absolutely, yeah.
To probably nobody's surprise, I'm going to ask a question about sort of applicability to special education students, right? So when you talk about some of the pitfalls and adapting the curriculum inappropriately and how that could impact, but also there are probably kids who do need the curriculum adapted.
Yep.
So will some of this professional development sort of help in that regard so that it's appropriately being used for students, you know, sort of
Yeah.
across the
I think
spectrum?
I can give you sort of a anecdotal example. Paige is working with some teachers, special education teachers, and they said, well, what other resources can we use? And Paige said, well, you can use the resource.
Okay.
And then offered lots of support in how to modify or accommodate within the resource
Okay.
to still hit the objectives and targets for learning. We've started to think of things in triangles oftentimes. So in unit design, you have essential questions and enduring understandings. That's kind of foundational. And what we're finding with these HQIMs is that's foundational. The next layer is instruction and practice. The next layer is all the formative data collection that you do so that you can tweak and adjust and revise so that you hit the peak, which is this mastery performance task or assessment. And it's all students need to be able to meet that peak or mastery performance task or assessment. So it's these middle layers where we tweak and adjust and revise, knowing it's still the same target, still the same target. The teacher was concerned because the students that she was working with didn't maybe have a basic skill that she felt was going to require different content. And Paige was able to show her within the module, Paige broke it down, where all the touch points were for that skill and how they spiraled so that students would attain mastery. So then we can look at each touch point and say, okay, what we do for accommodation there, what we do for accommodation there. Let's get some data, how are we doing? Okay, we need to do some more accommodation because we're gonna hit that triangle at the top. We're all going to the triangle.
So, for example, kids will have this, you know, that they'll be reading the same book in ELA necessarily, but coming at it, you know, in a way that might be modified for
Right.
where they're at.
Yep.
But they're all kind of reaching to the same, you know,
Yeah.
end sort of result of what they get out of the unit, let's say.
Yep, you might need some kind of summary or main point or some pre-teaching or some work in the language, the vocabulary. We're talking a lot about syntax and how do we get kids to read complex text by really breaking down syntax. We talked about Graphic organizers are commonly used as a modification, or accommodation. So backwards filling a graphic organizer, taking a piece of published writing and understanding the building blocks of it by filling in the graphic organizer, things like that. So it's using everything in teacher's bag of tricks, but keeping kids in the core content.
Okay. So when this piece talks about, you know, being true to the material, that doesn't mean there is an accommodation. It just means
Correct.
we're staying on the same path. Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
And that's that piece, I'm really glad that you asked that, because that's that piece I talked about a little bit earlier with integrity versus fidelity. So some people heard you need to use it with fidelity, and that means you follow the script and do exactly what it says. So we're just talking about, well, what does it mean to use it with integrity? It means using it the way it's designed, but DESI's vision, meeting the needs of all learners, how do we do that within this design?
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, thank you.
Can I-
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for this, Jen. There's a lot to digest. I wanted, and I might need to just kind of meet with you separately. Can we go talk a little bit about the math program?
Yes.
So I've been getting a lot of questions from parents in middle and high school or comments about math. And I think you said it so well with like the students in sixth grade, like they're processing and they're working things out, and it seems like it might be harder, yet in the long run, better. And I think, right, might be seeing some of that struggle kind of play out a little bit in the upper grades as well. I guess, so, and I remember, I think, that we were piloting a bunch of, I think they were the math pilots last year, right? And we kind of went, they weren't any that we, thank you, that we loved you.
Here she comes.
Am I jumping ahead?
It's okay.
I guess I don't really know what my question is. I just feel like I need to understand a little bit more about what the math curriculum is and how it's different, and maybe this isn't the time or place to do it yet.
Yeah.
And that is also fine.
Yeah.
I guess it's like, are we still doing this, like, it seems like we're still teaching to standards. Are we still giving students the opportunity to learn those standards and retake it, or how have things differed?
That's a great loaded question.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
And
we're
it's
here
a
for you.
lot,
We
and
got
I
you.
totally get that, and I've been going
Lots of
back.
variables at play,
Yeah.
I think. So one is the communication piece. We didn't do as good of a job communicating to all stakeholders about this shift as we could have. We should have done it sooner. And that includes students. I think maybe most importantly, students. So this is a big shift in how you're going to be taught and how you're going to be expected to engage in mathematical content, and here's why. So I think that that's an upcoming piece for us. I think there's different levels of implementation at the secondary level. So some people are really diving in and embracing the resource, and you're seeing the inherent challenges that are coming from that. And some people are not, people are tentative and a little hesitant to implement. So you sort of have this continuum. So a piece of it is getting everybody, I think it was Tracy who taught me to say, like, you're right where you are is right where you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
Right? And then I always add, and we're going to help you move forward. You can't opt out, right? So getting people moving forward collectively. So we're really grateful to have the support of TMTP because they are helping us with all of those things that you just described. Do you want to jump in, add more?
Yeah.
Go for it.
A little background, I think, to help you understand. One of the questions I heard is, what is the product we're using? So when we started this process, Illustrative Mathematics was the only curriculum resource that got perfect ratings in Ed Reports. It is, I think since then, there are now 2 others that have joined the ranks, but it is a very highly rated program. But its basis is what they call problem-based learning, right? So every concept that you learn in there is based on a real-world application, a real-world problem that kids are going to explore and learn the content through that natural exploration process. That is a shift for a lot of people, students, teachers, parents especially. You've all over social media, I get why can't we just learn it the way that we always learned it? And my answer was like, well, 90% of people, when I tell them I teach math, are like, ew. So that means it didn't work, right? So we got to try something new. So I think it's a shift for everybody. And I do think you brought up the point about as the kids get older, that is a pattern that we're noticing. The sixth graders are actually killing it. Like, I went into a bunch of classrooms this week and I was very impressed with the level of mathematical discourse that I was seeing, the kids' willingness to take risks, to make mistakes, and to learn from those mistakes and challenge themselves was very impressive. I think as you get older, that's actually something that you have to teach. We actually went into classrooms and got feedback from students, and a lot of the feedback that I got was, well, I'm nervous to make a mistake in front of my peers because I don't want like them to think that I'm stupid or that that I don't know what I'm talking about. And so that, I think, we as teachers have to transition from I'm just teaching math to I'm teaching you how to struggle and to problem solve and to learn, and that's actually the skills that I'm teaching. And I think that that's a shift for students and teachers alike. But I'm seeing that progress, and I do agree with you that I think the shift is harder the older the students get. And I don't know if you guys would agree with that, but I think we're seeing that, especially in the 11th and 12th graders being a little bit more resistant. But we're also seeing that it's coming, that we're making progress. So the teachers that have really embraced it and adopted it and are starting to teach those problem-solving skills are seeing the kids rise to that level of mathematical discourse and rigor that they're seeing. So I think we will take time, and I agree with Jen that we should have done a better job with communicating with parents and students that shift might be uncomfortable at the beginning, and that I think in the long run it's going to be okay. And we are also working with teachers on some of the problems you don't anticipate are going to happen, so you give the first assessment and everybody does bad and people are just like, well, here's your grade. And then we had to kind of go in and be like, what do we do about it? And fix those problems in real time. But we do have a very active team that is working on it and on top of it. And as those issues come in, trying to address it the best we can. And I do hope that people start to see that this is going to bring positive change to our district. And I definitely believe that.
I did talk to some high school students about it, and someone that was struggling and challenging and expressing that they didn't like the resource. And they talked about they preferred more traditional instruction. So you're taught the algorithm, you do a lot of practice problems, you take the assessment, you do really well, and you move on. And so I was asking them how much they retained from previous years, because what the research shows is that doesn't really make the learning stick. You're lacking the transfer skills, but they were really focused on the grade. And I think we trained them well to focus on the grade and to expect to be taught the algorithm, do a host of practice problems, and take an assessment and move on. So I think that shift at the high school level is a bigger shift because they've had more years of a different kind of instruction.
Yeah, that was a great answer to kind of a convoluted question. So I appreciate both of you. And I'm going to just add that I also think it's tricky for those upper level high school when they're taking SATs, they're looking at colleges, and they're like, it feels like everything's high stakes. I completely agree that the problem solving, even like, I'm a big believer in failing and being comfortable to fail and learning and all of that. I think it's going to be amazing. And I also kind of can respect the fear and unknown when you feel like your life is on the line, junior year or senior fall. So thank you for all the work, and I'm really, I
feel
so
like
excited to hear more.
Building administration and department heads and coordinators are really, like, we shouldn't have the results we had from the first assessment impacting report cards and things like that.
Right,
So problem solving around what to do about that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
They're getting so much support. I think they are like, now there's too much.
Good problem.
When it rains, it pours, right?
I thank you so much for, because that was not a fair
That was a great question, and it kind of directly relates, because how are we meeting the needs of everybody? So we have the coaching going on, we have in-district led by outside folks from Imagine Learning, we have in-district led by Grafton Public School staff, and this is not just for math and ELA, this is for our phys ed teachers, our music teachers, our art teachers are collaboratively working on revision to curriculum, and all kinds of goodness going on. So lots of professional development, and we're finding, no matter how robust it is, we can do more, which was the idea with the task teams, things like that. So I did want to introduce our curriculum coordinators to you. This is Jenny Duras. She's our 7 to 12 STEM coordinator. Paige Cooper is our 7 to 12 humanities. Meg Cunningham is not here. We'll show you why in a second. Pam Gillens is new, but I had to go home sick today. She's got the fever that Paige is fighting right now. And I thought it'd be nice if we could just give you, if you feel like it's okay, if we just give you a quick blush of some of what they're doing.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
All
Want me
right.
to go first since I'm sitting here?
Yep, and I have to hit escape because my slides are too big. Oh, I think I already have them up. If I put my glasses on, I don't know for sure. Here we go. Jenny's here, so she's gonna go first.
And I already
we go.
said a lot of what I was gonna already say.
Perfect
But
timing.
I think to add to that, as far as, you know, I talked about joking that now they're getting so much support, they probably think there's too much, is, you know, we do have the luxury of working with TNTP, so they're working with me on trying to come up with the best professional development for them. We did identify through student and teacher feedback that teachers really did feel that they needed more time to really learn how to work inside the lessons. Your question earlier about special education is Illustrative has amazing support systems built right into it of how do you add to this lesson for students with disabilities, for English language learners. Those supports are really already built into the curriculum, but teachers really needed time to look at the lesson itself and then how we can incorporate those things in. So we just recently started doing half-day PD with the teachers at each grade level to really look into picking through that module and feeling really comfortable with the structures and the routines. Math is now actually teaching language, more so than I think math teachers are used to. I know myself included, like I'm really good at math, but they were making fun of me because I have a cheat sheet and it's because I don't like to speak in front of people. So, there is like, we're now as math teachers teaching language, and so really getting into how do I teach these kids to read this problem and to pick out the important information and to understand where that's coming from. So we took a lot of time to really look at a unit and get the big pictures and the understandings and how to build in those supports and those needs right there. So that is the work that we're doing right now and getting teachers more comfortable with that. Outside of implementing the new curriculum, there are other projects that we're working on. So we are doing curriculum mapping across all of the subject areas. So a focus of mine is also the comprehensive physical education and health standards have been updated recently. So we're doing a lot of work at looking what we're doing in those classes and making sure they're aligned to the state standards, particularly health are very new. We're working on, for future information, you're going to get an elective health course coming your way to approve. So that is something that we're working on, which is really exciting work that we're doing. I also am supporting Project Lead the Way at 7th and 8th grade. They just finished their first 30-day unit. So I went in and worked with teachers on what worked, what didn't work, what do we want to adjust. Obviously, the first time you do anything, pacing was the biggest feedback. We didn't finish. How can we get it into that time? Are things that we're working on in there. And then, obviously, I really like looking at the data. It's kind of my favorite part. But so we are using our STAR data and our MCAS data to kind of pinpoint our areas of strengths, our areas of weakness. Really identifying, we're trying to shift the practice to the missing prerequisite skills and weakness areas. How can we naturally incorporate them into the curriculum so they're not their own separate, like we're gonna go reteach the skill from 3 years ago, but instead kind of almost hide it in the current grade level material so the kids are getting that review that they need, but also making that forward progress. So that is work we're doing with both our big data, MCAS and STAR, and another cool thing about Illustrative, they should pay me a sell for them because is that We now have, the assessments are online, so we get all of that data, which, wasn't awesome the first time around, but eventually it's gonna be, and it's gonna be a really awesome tool for us to pinpoint already, even though it, the first assessment was tough for a lot of kids, we could pinpoint things that did go well. There were some classrooms that had really awesome outcomes, and so we could go in and say what worked there, and how do we bring that to the other classrooms? So, that's a really powerful tool that we're gonna be using as well.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
I'm gonna stay
you.
with 7 through 12 and have Paige come up real quick. Oopsie.
So I'm in year 9, but also year 1. So you guys know me as an English teacher, but now I'm lucky enough to be the humanities coordinator, 7 through 12. So we'll be talking about what we've been working on. So so it's funny because I was a part of the implementation process as a teacher for Wit and Wisdom, and so now in this role, the bulk of my work is sort of the phase 2, like what happens after phase 1. How do you refine and align a curriculum like this? How do you teach it with fidelity, right? Or integrity, not fidelity. So basically our work there has been pretty much focused on, now that we've been in it, hindsight is a beautiful gift because now we can look back at what we did last year and say, oh, I can provide professional development on like the instructional theories that support the practices that it's hard to see when you're in it. So that's been really helpful to sort of explain, like you were talking about. You stole my thunder with my triangles. I love triangles. I do. It's just a great visual to sort of see like when skills and standards are spiraling through and how they all work together to get to like really strong grade level core content. The instructional shift is different in these materials, and so providing the research about why that is incredibly helpful, having already done it once for teachers. We're also collaborating with other districts who are a little bit ahead of us. So we're going to visit, we're going to go to 2 different schools over the coming months to see what Wit and Wisdom looks like in their classrooms because they're a little ahead of us. So that's really awesome. We're hoping to steal some best practices and maybe share some of our own. And then finally, how to use the data. We have a wealth of data available to us, so how do we use that to teach the kids who are in front of us? So we've been focusing a lot on STAR and MCAS to sort of refine our instruction. So here's an example of something that I gave to, well, I guess 7, 8, 9, and 10, right, for English. It looks a little different than 10th grade because there is no 9th grade MCAS. So what I did was, for 10th grade, we looked at the last 5 years of MCAS. I looked at the last 5 years of MCAS, and I said, where are our strengths? Where are our struggles? So if we had a strength for 3 out of the 5, it made it to the green. So that's the top page. And if we had a struggle for 3 out of the 5, it made it to the red. So that was the first level that I gave to the teachers, was here are the standards that we've struggled with 3 out of the past 5 years. There is no 2020 because that was the pandemic. Then step 2 was, okay, how are we teaching it versus how are we assessing it? Because everybody does the first one. That's all I did. All I did was all I did was that one. But I didn't do it the way MCAS assesses it, right? So then what does that look like? How can we up our rigor? So then we did a little notice and wonder. So these hyperlinks there are all of the MCAS questions over the past 5 years. You can also see where MCAS loves to test, right? Like that's also an interesting point of data. Next, what we're going to do, so that's step 3, coming in the next couple of weeks, I'm going to poll the 10th grade teachers, because this is their data, and we're going to redesign, we're going to resurrect an old unit, and we're going to use this data to sort of help drive our instruction. So we can, if we feel like we only do that first one, which we do all feel like that, but we don't do it the same way that MCAS does it, or we can up our rigor more, that would be really helpful. The ones that are not highlighted at all, you might be thinking like 10-3, you notice is not highlighted at all, that's STAR data. So that lets us know that the kids who are in front of our faces right now, they struggle with that standard. So we need a little TLC there. So then as we explore this new unit, we'll make sure to sort of make sure that we explicitly teach and have students engage with that standard really well. And that will change every year, right? Like what the kids in 10th grade this year will need something different next year. Other things I've been working on, I love that you asked about accommodations, modifications. I've been very much working on that and what that looks like with these high-quality instructional materials. And it's teaching grade level content at different instructional levels. And that's a huge shift for teacher philosophy and teacher thinking, and how do you do that? I'm opening my heart to AI, and I have found that AI is incredibly helpful with, like, if you take a quiz that is a grade level quiz with grade level skills, you can change the vocabulary of it to make it instructional. So then you're moving the cognitive load to the skill and not the cognitive load to, like, the word on the page, and that messes it up. So it's been a very much needed opportunity for teachers to grow together. We've also been working on curriculum mapping, and then again, just using the data that we've already got. And that includes common assessments. So whether they have Jen or me, we should be able to look at one thing and say, oh my God, Jen killed it, all my kids failed. Like, what are you doing? And then we can use that as another point to make sure that we're providing equitable rigor so that all students can access the materials. And then, I mean, I talked a lot about English, but, you know, the stuff on the right also goes to other disciplines. Each discipline needs its own thing. And so it's finding where, like, world language and social studies, where do they need the most help, and then getting it for them. So we've been working a lot in different modes there as well.
Great.
Thank you. You're welcome. Do you have any questions?
Anybody have anything?
All right. I was hoping to talk to you, but that's okay.
Hello,
everybody.
Diva, so hers look different because hers are
So, yeah, so fancy.
Thank you. So you forgot to introduce me earlier.
Yeah.
So Kristen Perron, I know most of you.
No introduction.
Yes. Thank you.
I apologize.
That's okay.
Her title has
That's
shifted a little
okay.
bit.
It's okay.
So she is our pre-K to 1 coordinator, so
Yes.
she's doing all the things.
Yes, I'm excited to share a little update with you about the pre-K. Hello, by the way. Old Student Newspaper Club. So I'm happy to share sort of 3 elements to just highlight some important and interesting things that we're doing at the curriculum department, pre-K to 1. The first one is going to be, I'll talk a little bit about the pre-K curriculum mapping, specifically science is a focus for this year. Second thing we'll talk about is data-driven instruction during the WIN block. We'll talk about what that is also. And then the third thing is our launch and implementation of EL education for K to 1. Okay? So looking at that first block there, the pre-K curriculum mapping, many of you know that we've navigated away from Atlas to our own Grafton sort of Google Maps. And so in order to do that, we're sort of creating new UBD templates to flesh all of this out. So when I looked at what they already had for pre-K, their science was not as well fleshed out, and so I decided to target that this year, sort of behind the scenes, creating all of the different templates and looking at the units and lessons and getting it ready so that next year, when the teachers are ready to implement that, it will already be all set and ready to go, so they can start from a place of success. What I looked around through, what DESE recommended as far as science curriculum for preschool, because the kiddos are little, and we want them to really be looking at their local environments and things that really make sense to them and are meaningful to them. So I'm using Mass Audubon curriculum because they, for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's just great, local, looking at things right in your environment, birds, trees, soil, that sort of thing that's meaningful to these little ones. And the great thing is that it really dovetails nicely with EL education. So in that the 4 units that Audubon looks at are our feathered friends, birds, digging in soil, tremendous trees, and weather. EL education does 2 modules on birds. They do one on weather. They do one on trees. So it's really just, the idea for me is to create those cross-grade connections, and imagine how nice it would be to have kids building their background knowledge to be ready for those modules, but also have those first graders come down and work with their preschoolers when they're doing a unit that's similar. Or if preschool is learning about soil, if they plant some seeds that then by the spring, or the birds that they're studying could be going and getting the sunflower, just making those connections so it all is meaningful and creating a community within those grade spans too. So that is really the first one. Second thing I wanted to talk to you about is really some of the great work we're doing on data-driven instruction on the foundational skills K-1 in the WIN block. So the WIN block, if you haven't heard about that, that's what I need. So it isn't really just for students that are not meeting benchmark, it's for everybody, but because there's so much on the teacher's plate, we're just doing like a phased approach. So this year, even though we are trying to give everybody what they need, our focus as far as coordinating is those students that are not meeting benchmark. So what we're doing, obviously, you guys know we've been using for years Dibble's Eighth to identify our students. And so once we have done that in the past, that's great. But what's the next level that we can take to really make this thing work? So we worked with a nice structure with the principals. We created a master schedule where there is an EL block, which is 60 minutes that staggers throughout the day. And with that, there's a WIN block, what I need. So that's when the kids are not going to be pulled from that 60 minutes. They're going to get that core instruction, and then they're going to have that WIN block. So that's a critical component, because in the past, if you had some needs, you might have been pulled during that literacy block. You're missing the core, so you're getting this. So by the time you could read, you don't have the vocabulary, the background knowledge, so you're still at a deficit. So we said, let's set it up so that kids are going to get that core instruction for 60 minutes. They're not going to miss it. And then they get what they need during the WIN block. So that's an exciting thing that we have in the works here, K-1. The other thing to just highlight here is that we're using, we're doing like a different structure. So we're having a literacy specialist go into the kindergarten classrooms, each one as a stagger, and the teachers are working during that time too. So there are 2 intervention groups going on at that time in the classroom, with people who are the most qualified to give it. So we have a literacy specialist and a teacher giving that intervention. Did you want to say something? No. Oh, I thought I heard you. Nope. Okay. So that's exciting. And I've already seen some great things happening. Some literacy specialists talking to me about, hey, I was doing, the OG blending board, and then the teacher brought theirs out, so there's some nice work that the teachers can do together there. So that's exciting to see. And we've also created like shared folders with evidence-based instruction, so like Florida Center for Reading Research, Reading Universe, UFly, Orton Gillingham, all of these things are the things that we're using to target what those kids need, so that's exciting. We also are doing progress monitoring, and we have shared spreadsheets so that teachers and literacy specialists and the principals can all see the most updated data on these students in real time, so that's great. As I said, it's kind of a phased approach. The other kids are doing something. It's not fully fleshed out yet, but what we're doing is like the next level of students that maybe just are meeting benchmark or maybe slightly below. Could be on Lexia. Then we're using Epic. We're using partner reading, readers theater, book clubs, things like that kids on grade level can do. We've tried to flesh out some things that are related to EL, like Wonderopolis. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with that. Created like little packets of like, here are 10 Wonderopolis units on birds. So if somebody wants to dig in a little bit deeper, there's some resources there. We're starting to like make some headway into that. So the other intervention, still here in the middle, talking about math. It's a little bit different. During math intervention, we are actually doing it during the math block, but we're not pulling the kids out. We're having the interventionists go into the class and providing additional opportunities for response, additional practice opportunities, bringing in additional manipulatives so they can sort of break things down and have more opportunities to talk about their thinking and correct errors in thinking during the math block. So they're still getting that lesson from the teacher, but then during that independent or partner time, they're having that math interventionist with them there. Because we have a high quality instructional materials in math, we thought, let's just make sure we're having that coherence. So once again, the kids aren't working on something different, having to learn 2 math lessons. They're just working on that in a scaffolded way. So we're excited about that. And once again, we did use STAR Math to identify those kids, and we're using STAR CBMs to track their progress. And finally, in the last area here that I want to focus on is our EL education launch. We're supporting teachers and training and preparation in a variety of ways. We've kind of touched upon some of them today already, but we have done some half-day PDs with some other outside sources, looking at module overviews and unit overviews. We have an upcoming PD that I'm working on with Pam Gillens, who's the 2 through 6 coordinator, who's not feeling well tonight. On Friday, we're working with grade level leaders to do lesson internalization protocol and to really dig in deep into the lessons and what do the kids right in front of you need. So we're excited about that. It's kind of like a step-by-step approach because we're going to train the grade level leaders, and then on Monday, there's one of the teaching and learning meetings, and so they'll sort of be able to help lead that work because there'll be someone at every grade level who's kind of really comfortable doing that. So let's see, the last couple of things. Thinking about, like, we've been talking a lot about like that bigger picture, sort of the nuts and bolts of how to support teachers during this implementation. As Jen said, it's a really heavy lift moving into this kind of curriculum, and not only in the nuts and bolts of what you have to do and the texts and the 30 slides a day, every day, but also the preparation of materials that first year. You know, so I started going into classrooms and noticing, where are people in this process? Are they overwhelmed? What do they have? So I just saw a opportunity to create sort of like a workflow, sort of make it easier for you to find what you need for each unit, and then to do I do this first one, so I'll find them, I actually make them, printed them, and delivered them to them. So they have everything they need for that entire unit. So that's the I do, the next one we'll do together, the next one that they can do. Or if they're not ready, we'll slow that process down a little bit. But it really helped them to be able to stop and focus in on that kind of like intellectual preparation for the lesson and really diving deep and knowing where do you have to go with this, because I don't have to worry that I have to make all these protocol sheets and all this stuff. They already had what they needed. So that was kind of like a nuts and bolts thing for the teachers. I think you might have had that up there, and also in the sheet that I gave you, you could see that also. Going forward, the next thing that we've sort of started to look at is, what does an EL model classroom look like? Because in the past, when we won't even say POTS literacy or the cafe. We all knew what it looked like, though, and everybody had their cafe boards and things like that. Right now, nobody is sure. Everyone's kind of creating their own, so I've got some volunteers at each grade level to create a model classroom. What does it look like, a model classroom, so that other teachers can come and look at it, too, and we can all help each other and learn together.
Madam Chair. Kristen, so what are we doing? You talked a lot about kids that are not meeting the benchmark. What are we doing for those kids that are far exceeding the benchmark? You've got a first grader who's reading at a fifth grade level. And like Jen was speaking of earlier, we want to make sure that every year of work equals a year of growth. So what's being done for those kids?
It's not that we aren't doing anything for them, it's just not an area that I'm really coordinating right now, but I can tell you some things that I know anecdotally that we're doing. So some teachers have like almost like a genius hour, kind of like focus on an area of interest and create projects. We have packets of books of study, like let's say you're going to read 10 books on a topic, and so you can really dive in deep and do a project and things like that. But as I said, it's not what I'm really focused on this year because there is such a heavy lift. I'm trying to make sure that we're coordinating for the kids that are not meeting benchmark, but it's not to say that we aren't doing things in pockets, but that will be my focus on the next phase.
Anyone else? It's good stuff.
Great stuff.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There's Meg.
Yay!
Oh, that's the best.
Oh, Callan.
So we're excited to have Meg back. She'll be back with us the 21st and digging into the same work that you've heard everybody describe.
Yay.
That's awesome.
All right, almost done here, I promise. Way back there. But just looking forward, I shared this plan with you last year. So a lot of our budget decisions and allocations can reflect the work that is going to continue and the work that needs to start happening in terms of looking at resources for science, social studies, world language, just making sure we keep everybody in the loop consistently and that we plan for those needs. So in terms of budget, Kathleen was instrumental in helping me prepare for this evening, and she and I meet often, probably more than she wants to, because I always have a lot of questions. But just trying to be fiscally responsible, but also get the best resources we can for our students and get teachers what they need to provide their best work.
Jen, with this, the textbooks, and it says year two of curriculum implementation, is that a cost that we're going to see continual, like for years going forward in the $300,000 range?
I don't think we will see what we saw this year because of doing two resources, two core content areas at one time. And also, I think DESE, because they're pushing high-quality instructional materials, because they've developed a new vision and want to support the vision, we're seeing a lot more open source resources. So we might potentially look at something like OpenSciEd for science. 8th grade right now is investigating the Democratic Knowledge Project, which is an open source for social studies. So I think trying to be as fiscally responsible as possible and plan this curriculum review cycle around trying to not hit the district with the double whammy that we experienced this year. So that is, I think, probably a generous allocation there. We may not see numbers that large. Project Lead the Way, the grant that we have, we got a little over 11,000 for each elementary school and 25,000 for the middle school, and it's a 3-year process, and that supports trainings and durables. So the durables are the kits, like the VEX robotics kits, things like that. But there's consumables within there, the string, the pipe cleaners, that kind of thing, that have to be replaced. So the consumables become part of our responsibility starting next year. We purchased them this year too, so.
But is a lot of this mostly like a startup cost?
A lot of it is. The initial contract is huge, so we won't pay for professional development, new workbooks for next year for
Right.
math. It's already all encompassed in that contract, so the heavy lift is done. I appreciate how creative Jay's brain is in terms of budgeting and making that happen.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi. I have a question about the HQIM and how that, I mean, you're in the beginning of most of that, so this is kind of like a down the line, and I think it has a lot to do with sort of what you were talking about the, it looks like it's going to be easier, but right now we don't feel that. But as far as training new teachers, it feels like a big lift early on, and so obviously, we're not going to have the same teachers for the rest of our lives always.
Right.
How does that look down the line when we have to hire new teachers and then get them up and going on this kind of stuff? It seems intense.
Yeah, I think right now, the onboarding process is vast. So
Okay.
your principals are your instructional leaders at the building level, so they're learning how to
Right.
operate within this type of resource. Our coordinators, our department heads, our grade level leaders. So I think it's making sure when there is turnover, that that team is making sure that we bring that person up to speed so that they're able to step in.
I mean, as a former
great
teacher, I love the idea of, you know, everyone always says when you start teaching, they're like, don't reinvent the wheel, get resources from other people. And you're like, but where are those resources?
Right.
And it's like, they're right here. So I really, I love that. And I hope in practice it's as
They
wonderful
keep
as it
telling us, they keep
sounds.
showing us the slide of like a scale and saying, with this kind of resource, the planning is low and the preparation is high. You know, all the planning, all the culling out and finding all the materials.
Yep.
And we're saying right now, that's a load of hooey for this year. Like, everything's high. The planning, the preparation, all of it. The learning curve is steep.
So much.
But every district we've talked to has said, stay with it, stay with it, stay with it.
Slog
'cause
through.
We'll see the benefits, so.
Awesome.
All right.
Thank goodness you made it back to this.
So appreciate
So one of my favorite parts of my job is I get to cruise around and see all the cool stuff going on, so. Anything else I can answer for you? And thank you for attending for so long.
Jen, I could talk to you all day, so I will
Sure,
keep it.
we
Yeah, and
all
please
have
do,
them.
like, please call me, come in, ask me questions, email, whatever you need.
Awesome.
We love it.
This is incredibly comprehensive. Thank
thank
you.
you.
Really,
Thank you
really
so
helpful.
much. Yeah.
That's great.
Fantastic.
Thanks, Jen.
Thank you.
Does anybody, yeah, I was going to say, does anybody object to me moving the students right to student reports so they can go home?
All right, so we do have a decent amount since last time. I'll start off with the Craft and Vendor Fair we held last Saturday. We want to thank all of our sponsors. It turned out really well. We reorganized it a little bit. It was the class of 2024 started it, but hopefully be passed down to each class now on. So
We had parent-teacher conferences on both Election Day and that following Thursday, and parents and teachers got to collaborate together and discuss any issues or concerns they may have had.
And then our football team had their first round of playoffs, and they won against Bedford, so they're advancing to round of 8. And now, since it's with the MIAA, note to anyone attending the games that there are ticket prices now. Ms. Paulson mentioned earlier.
We held a cheer competition at GHS Saturday the 2nd, where both our JV and our varsity won SWICL.
And then our student council is holding a coat drive until the 22nd.
Grafton Food Pantry is hosting a food drive for Thanksgiving.
And then also last Thursday, we had almost 40 delegates attend a student council conference at BVT. So they did workshops, energizers, just different activities like that. And, oh yeah, I can mention. And then our parent-teacher connection in support of Bon Voyage is starting to sell card magnets. So the information will be, the information for that will be online.
The class of 2026 has a winter hat fundraiser going on right now. And also for the class of 2026, we are selling class rings. The information was sent home last week from the company, and they'll be sold tomorrow during lunch.
Can I just mention that I have both a hat and a magnet on my car, and they
Love the
are
support,
both
yes.
high-quality products. I wore my hat walking this morning.
Are
It
you
was
a,
amazing.
are you a palm or a flannel beanie?
Flannel beanie.
I got the palm, and
sec-
they're both great.
The one I had last time was the palm, and I lost it. It
I
was
love the
I just went without palm.
We're proud supporters over here, so
Yeah, yeah, I was very excited.
And then our school play, starting the weekend of the 22nd, is called This Murder is Staged, and I know they're working hard on that, so it should be.
Grafton is hosting the top 60 best field hockey players in the state for a tournament this Sunday. With one of our own athletes, Captain Olivia Viens, will be playing.
And then we have a lot of end-of-season wrap-ups for sports, and like we have the banquets going. I just came from my volleyball banquet, so those are happening around this time at the school, and yeah, so that's all we have.
Congrats on a great season, Riley.
Thank you. I know you're, yes, very
Enjoyed your
supporting.
games immensely.
Yes.
Well, obviously, we always love to have you stay, but I'm sure you want to go.
So I would love to say lots of comments.
Yeah.
Thank you
so
both.
much. Of course, thank you.
Welcome back. Nice to have you. Riley.
Yes, we're really glad you're back.
Did you miss me?
I did miss that.
No, I didn't. It wasn't.
Hi.
To just jump in?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I made some modifications when Jen and the curriculum team were presenting. Earlier this evening, a few of the reps and myself attended the first TRICOM meeting with representatives from the Select Board and Finance Committee. At the beginning of that meeting, Mary from what's her actual role? Do we know?
Finance director.
Finance director for the town, spoke about redoing or updating the town forecast in terms of the budget projections. The revisions look to be quite favorable for FY '26, so we were going to tonight talk more about the forecast, but I think with the numbers kind of up in the air, I think we'd be wise to wait until the town forecast is revised. No matter what, there wasn't a scenario that I saw in potential revisions that would make me change my thinking that an override will definitely be needed to maintain level services for the town. We still have to wrestle with the following future questions. Will it be on the ballot? If there is an override put on the ballot, is that for stronger services, level services, or reduced services? And how long would it be designed to last? We talked about that during the meeting. Do you do 5 years, 3 years, less? My gut tells me it would be probably 3 years. But we will see if that even comes to fruition, and what would the cost to taxpayers be, obviously, is going to be dictated by the previous 3 questions. In terms of the timeline, just to update you, obviously tonight we did curriculum and athletics. In a week, we meet again. We will have operations, HR and staffing. We'll talk about capital. That's not really a part of the school budget, if you will, but it has a huge impact. So those 3 things will be covered. In December, we will have the preliminary FY26 level service budget before you. And then after the holidays in January, we will dive into potential reduction scenarios. And then ideally in February or early March, the A budget will be brought before the school committee for approval. And then after that, we wait for state numbers and then move into town meeting. So next steps, I pretty much just covered all of this, and those reduction scenarios are going to be based on whatever we have for the most updated town forecast, which right now, it's a good thing, but the numbers look to be for FY26 a little better than was anticipated a couple months ago, and this is exactly what happens when you come out this early. So there's a little added hope for FY26. Anything that I missed? Any questions for us?
What are the 2 scenarios in the original?
Initially, I should have taken it out, I apologize. Initially, we were going to go into December and talk about level service
And
and
the reduction.
reductions.
Okay,
And the
so-
thought was, let's do the level service, come back from the holidays, gear up for whatever comes in the spring.
So it's really, it's not.
It's just going to be
yeah,
level
okay,
service.
Cool, okay.
To Dr. Cummings, to go back, it says on the next meeting, we'll have the budget report for HR and staffing. If your contract is not completed by then, will that still be given? I mean, that's kind of a big portion.
I can speak to it on the 19th, for sure.
Okay.
I mean, yeah.
No, I just want to thank the building principals, because we got through all of the meetings in October, and they did a really good job sticking to the timeline, meeting with their staff, because we are trying to get all of this to you as soon as possible.
We appreciate it.
Can I make a statement? And I said this to you personally. I love that you're doing the 2 scenarios. It breaks my heart that they are reduction and level service, and there is not a 3rd scenario where we are actually, fixing things and doing stuff. And I just want to say that.
Okay,
All right.
I think that's the
been a
budget
week.
discussion for today. Are you staying where you are, Jay?
I wasn't going to, I can if you'd like.
You don't have to.
Doesn't matter.
What do we have next? Oh, the goals.
Goals.
So I put before you, I didn't hear anything back
Yeah.
about them. I
Yeah.
can take feedback. I put 4 draft goals before you, 2 student learning goals and 2 professional practice. The student learning goals were continuation of pretty ambitious goals from last year that were designed to be at least 2-year goals. One's literacy-based and the other is math-based, fairly straightforward. And then 2 professional practice goals. One is focused on improved communication and connection with the elementary community, knowing that if everything falls into place, we are going to most likely be looking for an override in the spring of '25. And even if we don't, I think that connection and increased communication is a good thing. And I will be, or I already am, in the process of refocusing on our emergency preparedness. It's something that we've worked on every year, but every few years, you really need to strip it down and kind of rebuild, if you will. So those are the 4 goals. I can take any feedback, I can make any changes, additions. Yeah. And then it's like in a couple months, I have to do a mid-year report. So, I'll be back.
Do you have any comments or questions on the goals?
I like the communication and building connection. I feel like it works well with some of our, student goals as well of
Yeah.
connecting, and I think that's a great focus.
Okay.
Social media is not my strong suit.
No, it's not mine either.
yeah,
I've got
I saw that
two,
on there. I was like,
school
"Ooh."
service kids who are wonderful. Today they set up Instagram. I have no idea how to use it, but they are going to kind of
Nice.
run it.
You got this.
You're gonna be TikToking in minutes.
Yeah, I still probably won't know how to do it, but they are super excited, and
Awesome.
so it'll be great.
I just said TikToking, I'm an old.
I love
I don't think we're doing
Jake
TikTok.
Cummings do a TikTok.
I think so.
I don't think so.
He can do one of the dances. It'll be great.
See how I create the budget? Very demure.
Very mindful.
Very mindful.
Should we dive into the collaborative?
Yep.
Yep, that one, we don't need to vote on, I just
Yeah.
need to, 4 times a year,
Yep.
put forth quarterly updates. We
Yep.
belong to 2 collaboratives, Aspet Valley Collaborative and SWEC, Southern Worcester Educational Collaborative. They provide tremendous professional development and support for among our neediest students with special needs. They're a fantastic collaborative. If you had a chance to check out any of the report, you'll see that.
Yes.
They are considered the best among the best in the state. So, no concerns from me.
Good stuff. All right, then we go right into your report.
All right, I don't think the students mentioned it, but tomorrow night, the Computer Science Honor Society is holding its induction ceremony. I think this is their 3rd year. Caden Ashmore visited, if you were on the committee 3 years ago, and he presented about the idea of creating it, and he did, and it's really flourished. The kids are super excited about it. That's in the auditorium at 6. Everybody's welcome. In the next few weeks, we are going to be bringing on an anonymous alert system. We have one that's set up for bullying right now on the website. It's homegrown. At the time, it was pretty good. They've now developed very polished, very comprehensive, easy-to-use programming. So we're going to pilot it at the 712 level. We had training today. We'll probably get it started either right before Thanksgiving or right after Thanksgiving, but I think it's going to be fantastic. There'll be lots of communication going out to parents. We're going to have high school students work with our middle school students and kind of talk it up that it's an app. You can also access it like you can the current program through the website. It allows for two-way communication. Once I know more about it, like how to actually use it, we'll be presenting a quick 5-minute overview for the school committee.
Is this also homegrown, or is it?
No,
some way
this
it's a
is,
really
yeah, but
purchased
now,
it?
they used to have it, but it was really, really expensive. Now, it's about $2,500 for us, 7 through 12. 24/7 allows that two-way communication, even on the weekends, middle of the night, what have you. I think it's going to be great.
So I know that product pretty well.
Stop It?
It's not Stop It, but it was one of their competitors. And also, just gonna throw this out there, that would make a great TikTok.
Okay? I'll see what I can do. I don't believe I'm on TikTok.
Oh, you will?
But yeah, it's really,
Awesome.
really good. We'll still keep our homegrown one and
Yeah.
have that link. Pre-K through 6 could utilize that. And then finally, I met with Chief Minardi from the police department on Friday. I've known him for years. He's fantastic. And we together simply updated the memorandum of understanding that we have to have with the Grafton Police Department. I put it in the drive folder for you. We really only changed dates and a few names. And we also scheduled a tabletop exercise, like an emergency exercise with MEMA, GPD, the town offices, like Highway Department and the schools. And that's going to be run in December. And I've done those years ago here in Grafton, but also in Shrewsbury. It's a great exercise and a way to coordinate and practice communication between the different, police, fire, schools, municipal, DPW, et cetera. So it's really in-depth, really well done by MEMA. So I'll report back on that sometime in December. And that's all I have.
Awesome, thank you. Any questions from anybody? All right. Future agenda planning. Does anyone have anything that needs to change on our agenda?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
we need to put on the agenda a vote for the contract renewal of Mass Association of School Committees, the service that we use that expires this January.
Okay.
So that vote should happen prior to the.
Prior to January. It's like December 10th, wide open.
I'll be voting no.
After all that, no, you're not. Thank you, Christie. Anything else anybody noticed? Okay. Great, minutes, we have minutes to approve. I'll take a motion.
Make a motion to approve the minutes from October 8th.
Second?
Motion made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I move to a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, minutes are approved. We have some warrants.
Madam Chair, I move that the committee approve warrant number 17 in the amount of $314,178.79.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll move to a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Madam Chair, I move that the committee approve warrant 18R4 in the amount of $434.40.
I second.
Motion made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I move to a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Madam Chair, I move that the committee approve warrant 18 in the amount of $156,067.94.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, I move to a vote. All those in favor? Motion carries.
Madam Chair, I move that the committee approve warrant 19 in the amount of $444,602.12.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, I move to a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Is that it?
That's it. That's it. I'm done. I'm done now.
I didn't lose one.
I cannot get warm.
Want to move over?
I am so
Are you
cold, like I am
cold?
so cold.
me
I cannot tell you.
Meanwhile, I would love to be
around
next to
yourself.
that door.
Christie,
Next to
do you
that
wanna
window. Come
just
sit
move
over
over?
here.
I'm all set, I'm all set, that's
You
okay.
sure?
Yeah, thank you though.
It's a little hotter, I feel.
Oh, I'm like so cold.
I don't ask me. The old woman. Policy. Yay! Yay!
All right.
Let's move to policy.
Policy day.
Where's our policy
How
book?
did you,
I feel really bad
why do you feel that?
that
'Cause we have so
Christie's
much-
cold.
Oh, me
And because
too.
it's, and we still have so
okay.
much policy.
I'm all
Oh,
Is
the
it-
policy, I
It'll
hope
go
should
fast,
move
I
quickly,
think.
I think.
Yeah.
I don't have my, oh, here it is. I was gonna say, my computer died because,
I have
my
like
God.
I have like a coat.
I know. Do
you wanna-
have a blanket?
Get a blanket on me now.
Jeez. So dramatic.
Do you want to come and smell that?
I'd have to like sit like in your lap, Lauren, it'd be warmer, like I'm freezing.
would
Put my
help.
down vest.
No, I'm okay guys, I'm okay, thank you.
I know what it's like though. It was really cold downstairs. So my computer died because my charger broke. Remember when it fell off the table? I broke my charger and it hasn't come from Apple yet. So anyway. No, I should be fine because I'm gonna take good notes. Leora, how do you want to do this? Do you want me to make a motion?
I do not
first?
want you to make
Thank
a
you.
motion first. I think I'd rather the introduction and discussion and then the motion.
Great, and that way, if it's supposed to be a second or first reading, we can say it before the motion.
Yeah,
Right?
agreed.
It just
Yeah.
makes so much easier.
It's
and-
easier for me to follow that way, so let's
Me
do
too.
it that way.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
great. So Christy, if I'm wrong, just tell me. No, I'm serious. Just be like, no, it just makes it so much easier. We think, and it wasn't just me, it was the whole
No,
committee.
I also agree with
We
this.
think BEDG is,
Review
to review as
written.
approved, as written.
Yeah.
Okay, Madam Chair, I would like to make a motion to review as approved BEDG minutes.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, I move to a vote. All those in favor?
All right, all right. Send, I'm taking, what I'm gonna write, I have to write physical notes. And I have to get, okay. Madam Chair,
Yes.
this is a new, from December 2023 MASC policy that we haven't caught up with, and this is one we all need to read, is, not that we don't, use of electronic messaging by school committee members.
This is a first reading.
It's a first, yeah, presented as a first reading. I think this is new to us. It was new from MASC. It just explains really what open meeting law and electronic, and we're very good about that as a committee anyway. So,
I have a
Madam-
comment. Oh,
sorry.
It's okay.
yeah,
This is a read to approve. We had a BHE. We actually, this was one of the ones that flipped over, even though it's on the December newsletter, it did get
got in?
captured. So we already have it.
We do? Okay.
Yeah.
I
Okay,
thought,
cool.
okay, so,
cool.
It's just a
Great.
read to approve.
We just need to
Review for
approve
approve
it.
then.
All right, thank you, Christy. All right, Madam Chair, I would like to make a motion to review as approved, or approve as reviewed, I think is what it is. BHE, use of electronic messaging by school committee members.
Second.
motion made and seconded. Any further discussion?
I have a comment, but it's
Yes.
not relevant, but it's somewhat relevant. I really loved
Go
when
for
I
it.
got to the part that said, or the district shall provide district email addresses. And I was like, oh, thank goodness our district does that, because that sounds very complicated if
Yes.
they don't.
It
So
does.
I
I know.
appreciate you.
I
Grafton.
agree,
Absolutely.
I agree. Well, that's
All
why I
right.
don't like just the one,
Yeah.
you know, it's just tricky.
Yep.
Okay,
All right, so any other discussion, comments? All right, I move to a vote. All those in favor?
all right.
Aye.
Great.
Okay. This is, we're returning this as a second reading. We talked about it 3 weeks ago. So this is as cleaned up. So Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve EB Safety Program as a second reading.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any additional discussion? Seeing none, I move to a vote. All those in favor? Aye.
Okay,
Moving right along.
okay.
Be first aid.
Well, now I'm kind of in the habit of doing it. This is also a second reading.
Yep.
So hopefully all feedback was, if there was, I'd like to make a motion to approve EBB first aid as a second reading.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, move to a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Give a-
No, I said aye, like
Oh,
I
sorry.
approve. I
Okay.
approve, yeah.
I do.
Sorry.
I sure
Sorry.
do.
I just raised my hand, but then I didn't say it, and then I.
I know, it's hard, yeah, never mind. All right, and this, we think is approved for approval?
This one, we approved this
We did
back in, yeah, on October 22nd. But I think that you guys made a mistake because what you really wanted in this packet was E, B, C, D. You have it on the policy, on the list.
On the list, but
but
it's
you-
not
Yeah,
here.
so I think it was a mistake.
Okay, that could be
Yes,
it.
that's
I think
correct.
you're absolutely right. Yeah,
Yes.
all right, I'll bring
Our
that
one
next
was full,
week.
So let's
Thank you.
come back to ABCD, okay?
Thank you. All right.
J then, next.
Yep. I know, I can't, I have to do them all because you're chairing. It's exhausting. All right, and here's our, second, although anybody else can make a motion.
Yeah.
Here's our second, reading on the, motor vehicle idling. Jay, I think you presented us in your memo a couple weeks ago, just what the work was being done with signage. So I don't know if there's any questions on that before we, move forward with this.
The signs are made. I don't know if Frank put them up. I saw them probably Thursday or Friday.
Yeah. You didn't do them over the weekend?
I have no idea. They might have gone up today. I have no idea.
Okay. So they're coming, if they're not already up.
Yep.
I'd like to, make a motion to approve EEAJ motor vehicle idling on school grounds.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, I move to a vote. All those in favor? Aye.
All right, Madam Chair.
Yep.
I'd like to make a motion to present EFE Civil Rights Complaint Policy for Child Nutrition Programs, to approve as reviewed.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, I move to a vote. All those in favor?
Aye. Madam Chair.
Yes.
I would like to make a motion to approve policy EHAA, district security relating to technology, to approve as reviewed.
Second.
This will need 2 readings. We never had this
This is first
policy.
reading?
Yeah, this is the first
Mother,
reading.
God, mother. Thank you, Christy. Madam Chair, I'd like to amend my motion to bring this as a first reading.
I amend my second as well.
Okay, motion made and seconded. Any other
Any
discussion?
thoughts on this one? Okay, we'll bring it next week. We'll see it as a second reading now. Exciting. We don't have much time to wait.
Do we still vote on it, though?
Oh,
Yeah,
did
it's a
we not
first
vote?
reading.
I
We did not vote. I'm
apologize.
like, wait a minute, where do we
I'm
go?
so sorry.
Okay,
Oh.
I move to a vote. All those in favor? Aye.
Yes. Okay. Cool. Madam Chair. All right,
That's
this is a first reading, and I wanted to point that this was MASC, we added Lynn LaFante's name. Her contact information is on the website in a prominent position, correct, Jay?
Correct.
Okay, that was one of the things we made, edits we made, excuse me. I would like to make a motion to present EHB, data and records retention, as a first reading.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, I move to a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
You. All right. I remember why this is a first reading.
This is the first reading. We never had this before, I think, right?
Right, it was the first reading.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to present GBEE, personal use of technology, as a first reading.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion?
I just want to make note that on this policy, there's 2 notes to make on it. Once you accept this policy, it's going to have to be placed in the handbooks, Dr. Cummings, from the staff handbook.
Yes.
Yes.
And then additionally to that, this policy has a reference INJD, access to digital resources. That needs approval as well.
Okay,
Yep.
thanks.
The other ones listed are either all set or on this list already.
Okay, thanks, Christy. Yeah, and Mandy knows it needs to go in the handbook. We've talked about it. She just knows she's holding on it until we approve it. So,
Any other discussion?
thanks for that.
Seeing none, I move it to a vote. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, this we have some, I'd like to explain it before we talk. So we had a big discussion a couple weeks ago, last time we met about, shoot, I really need, do you know how to explain this, Leora? No, this is.
Which part?
So this is for the domestic violence leave policy. What we pretty much decided was that we were going to give people, leave with pay.
With pay, yeah.
And then we had the documentation on what they needed to require, so it wasn't, so we could, I guess, prove it.
Yep.
So did you add to this policy,
We didn't add to it, what we did,
other than change the word paid? I just want to make sure that I didn't miss when I was reading. if
yeah,
there was a change.
no, we just made it, because remember it said at the end, like, you could either do paid or
You
unpaid.
could do paid or unpaid. and
We
then you
just-
could do like,
And
use
you
your
could use
vacation
it.
time.
Yeah.
Time or not.
Exhaust
Yeah,
your remaining
So-
time or not.
Right.
right.
And
We had
agreed
originally said,
not.
yeah, not to exhaust your sick time, because we were
Correct.
talking about with the paras and
Yes.
such.
Yeah,
So from that then we were gonna discuss the paid or unpaid, so you guys discussed it and
We
made it
went to paid,
Yes.
and that means we don't have to open up any kind of contracts either, so that we can just, well, not just, we didn't want people to have to exhaust, vacation time, or, because we've also discussed that generally people were already using some vacation time before they got to this point. Without Mandy, it's a little hard to explain.
Yeah.
So, Dr. Cummings, will there be an addendum made to the contracts?
We wouldn't need to.
Yeah,
You-
right. We don't-
Why?
If you wanted to, but I reached out to Sharon. So if we have it be that you don't have to exhaust other leave and it is paid, that's, I made that clear. If that's the case, what do we do? She wrote that the domestic violence leave policy would not impact other provisions of the CBAs if employees aren't required to use all accrued leave, for example, sick leave, before being eligible for paid leave under the domestic violence leave policy. It would just be another type of leave they are eligible for. You could add it to the CBAs and simply say bargaining unit members are eligible, et cetera, but I don't think it's necessary. They are still eligible by law for the leave, and the policy just clarifies that they don't have to exhaust their paid leave first. I suggest and recommend the school committee adopt the policy. It will apply to all employees, including collective bargaining unit employees, and then during the next round of negotiations, add a reference to the policy in the CBAs.
Okay, well, this is a new policy, and I know that, I know it because I told you to put it in the handbooks, and that's why this got put on here, but where it's a new policy and it's such a big policy, after this gets approved, I would like if this were sent out to all employees immediately.
Oh, yeah, that's easy.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with that,
Yeah.
too. Yeah,
It should be
Yeah.
made known, for sure.
yeah, absolutely. Okay, so, Madam Chair.
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to approve, policy GBGE, domestic violence leave policy as a second reading.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any additional discussion? Seeing none, I move to a vote. All those in favor? Aye.
Okay, cool. All right.
H-A-M.
First reading or review is approved?
It's approved.
This review is approved,
Okay.
right?
All right. Madam Chair.
Ms. Alphen.
I would like to make a motion to review as approved, approve as reviewed, excuse me. IHAM, health education, bleep me out.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any colorful or non-colorful
Sorry.
discussion?
Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I do have
Yep.
yeah, well, we can go approve. Let's go to approve, and then I have discussion further, kind of. It's about another policy.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I know where you're going with that, I think. Okay, so, let's move to a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
So my discussion is, this: when we're talking about this policy, we really need to talk about IHAM-R, which, even though they don't cross-reference each other, they're interrelated in that IHAM-R are, I think it's exemptions to that, to IHAM. So they're so interrelated.
Oh, that parents can exempt their kids?
Right, like how to get exempt from that, from the IHA.
And do we not have that now?
No.
Yeah, we do need it.
Okay, cool. Got it. Thanks.
So we'll have that.
It's gonna be amazing when we get through this. Yep. Okay, we voted on that though, right?
We voted on
We
IHAM.
voted on this. Yes, we're done. We can move on.
I need to edit this cross-reference right here. Madam Chair,
Ms. Alphen.
I would like to, make a motion to bring IJNDC, acceptable use of digital resources, to a second reading, with the caveat that at the bottom where it says GBEE, personal use of technology, bring in next time, cross that out, because I brought that in. That
Right.
was just a note to myself
Yep.
that I didn't catch.
Fair enough.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any additional discussion? Seeing none, I move to a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, we are
We're
passing
passing,
over.
yep.
Yep, IKF. So many. Madam Chair,
Ms. Offen.
I'd like to bring policy JLCD, administering medicines to students as a second reading.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, I move to a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Madam Chair,
Ms. Offen.
I would like to bring policy JICH, alcohol, tobacco, and drug use by students prohibited as a first reading.
We,
This a first
no,
reading?
it's a no reading. We had a JICH policy. We took on the MASC version. There's not, that was
Good.
part of your original whole flip over.
Yep.
I would
nothing.
like that people just take a nice reading
Just read it for the fun of it?
Just read it
Yeah,
for the
just
fun of it.
keep
And while we're
Yes.
talking about that JQ, your next one is the same thing. We had one. We don't need to
Yeah.
look at that.
Oh, no,
again.
but we changed it.
What did you change?
Yeah, we actually edited it,
We
so
did.
we are
We
bringing
do have
it
to bring
in.
it
So JQ, student fees, fines and charges, we just, if, I didn't bring it in as a, I actually usually would have done
Would
this,
have brought the old.
the old version in. Basically, what was the word?
It said indigent students. It was, the language was outdated and.
We didn't like it, so we just
Not-
edited it. It doesn't really change the purpose of it, but it, we talked about how, I mean, if you wanna pull it up even.
It's more modern in terms of talking about,
Yeah, I don't have no problem.
people.
So,
So.
yeah, Madam Chair, I'd like to bring JQ, student fees, fines, and charges as a first reading.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any additional discussion? Seeing none, I move to a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. No reading. Madam Chair,
Yes.
I would like to bring KDC, community use of digital resources, as a first reading.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any additional discussion?
So again, on this policy, it cross-references INJD, the access to digital
Yep.
resources.
We have to bring that.
INJDC?
Yep.
No,
INJD.
INJD. INJDC, we already.
Yeah, we already did that. Okay, thank you. Okay, awesome.
Alphabet soup.
Okay, awesome.
All right.
Thanks.
I move to a vote. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye. So I have some bookkeeping kind of things. So since Dr. Cummings had mentioned even tonight in regards to one of his goals with social media and such, so in that December 2023 newsletter, at this point, there were 12 policies. We've looked at 9 of them. The
Yep.
policies that remain are the IJND that we're talking about, INJDB, use of technology, but also KDCB, which is the district website and social media.
Yes.
That should really be updated, especially if
Yeah.
Dr.
We
Cummings is
started
going to enter this.
talking about it
century.
at our last policy subcommittee meeting, and it's on my, I made a spreadsheet. It's on my spreadsheet. I think we needed some time to
We
dig
were
into it
doing
a little
some
bit more.
research and, yeah, we
Yeah,
were doing.
there were
stuff.
some concerning, portions in it that we didn't want to just take. So we are working on that one, Christy.
And then, just so you know, no adjustments from the last meeting have been made onto our online
I
manual.
do know that, yep.
Okay.
That is completely on me. I did 3/4 of the work and then never sent it, and then figured I would do it all tomorrow.
Okay.
So,
Just
yeah,
wanted to
and
make
I know Mandy is waiting for some of these to go live. And
So
then
she can-
Anne Marie was at the conference last week, so it's just kind of a mess, but I am aware of that and have
So-
almost everything to go.
Mandy's waiting for the handbook still, is that what we're saying?
She's waiting for some of our policies to be approved to go on the, so she can link or reference
Put
them.
Reference them.
Yeah,
Do we have any member reports tonight?
yes.
Great.
I'll make it quick, though. One, I went to that lovely vendor fair on Saturday. It was great. I won a basket. Spent lots of money, so it was great to support, and see the kids. Second, several of us went to the MASC conference. I did get elected as vice chair for Division 4. So, yay, that was fun. Rebecca went to that. But what I really wanted to share was, we heard an amazing speaker. Pass that to Christy. He was Tim Shriver, so he's a
Oh,
Kennedy.
yeah. Oh, I know who it is.
And he runs something called the Dignity Index. Now, when I went to this, it was last Thursday morning. So it was kind of a fraught time, for many of us. And we were talking about really how to build skills for dignified disagreement. And while I wasn't ready to bring it to a national level, I think on a local level, it's super helpful. What it talks about is the difference between, and I can't do the thing justice, but you can go to the website, but it really talks about the difference between contempt and dignity. And when you start to kind of use that us and them language, which I know I am guilty of a lot, you really want to be above a 4 when you're disagreeing with people. You want to think, okay, the other side has a right to be here and a right to be heard. It doesn't actually have to be country, but, simple things like policies or budget or things like that, or when we're with other groups. And it really, it was enough. I went to the next session and we kind of took key speeches and we read through it and really talking about how we can stop being so polarizing. It really was one of the better sessions I've ever attended. So the website's on here. I got one from Mandy too, Jay. And I have one for Amy. And Rebecca got one when I saw her. So I have some more information. Anyway, I thought it was amazing, and I was really grateful to get to go. So thanks to Grafton for helping us get to the conference. It was a different time, but I took what I could and left the rest. I also got to present, which was kind of a bucket list for me with Dr. Cummings. And then the rest of the week, I was talking to one of my friends from Arlington, and he was like, how did it go? And I said, I think it went really well. 3 women walked right by, and they stopped, and they were like, oh my God, your presentation was so good. It was so helpful. And he asked me if I paid them. I didn't. So it was really, it was pretty cool. I felt like a celebrity.
Awesome.
So, no, but it was nice to be able to share knowledge and help others, which is what that conference is all about. So I was grateful to get to go.
Wonderful. Anyone else?
May I? I also attended the conference. It was lovely. I was only able to be there for 2 of the 4 days, but that was fine. And it's really neat to be out there with all these other people doing the same stuff, but differently in different parts of the state. So that was cool, in the Commonwealth, excuse me. And the other thing I was able to do, I was able to volunteer at the South Grafton Elementary School Book Fair. So I'm now just volunteering at book fairs left and right. It's been great. I really love it. And watching little kids be excited about books is just phenomenal, just phenomenal. So I loved that, and it went really, really well. I wasn't able to attend any of my parent-teacher conferences because I was out of town at a conference. So my husband did that, and I heard those went well too, so.
I attended the middle school Veterans Day program. That was great. I went to about 20 parent-teacher conferences. And
That weren't yours?
I rent out, so yeah.
That's awesome. I would definitely want you to go to mine because you'd ask way better questions.
So, yeah, it was great. And that's it.
I'm glad you got to go to the Veterans Day.
Yeah,
I was
that was great.
bummed to not be there.
I was bummed.
Well, my son was not glad because Mr. Starr mentioned me like 2 times during it.
They don't like that, no.
No, my son said the redeeming factor is that nobody can pronounce our last name, so the relation was kind of, maybe it wasn't it.
Maybe not.
That's why I have a different last name for my kids, to save them the embarrassment. I don't think we need executive session, so if we're all in agreement, I call this meeting adjourned. Good night, Grafton.
Good night.